Guess who's back? The Rare Hunter. I am back today with a deck profile. Today, I'm going to be going over Bravo Showstopper. This weekend, I stopped by in Utah with some of my locals, and we were playing at two Roach Nationals. We went to End Zone Games, I believe, in northern Salt Lake, and also we stopped by Kayfabe on Sunday. Both tournaments were classic constructed, and I brought Bravo and Lexi with me, but I played Bravo on the first day, on Saturday, and I felt like I had a lot of fun with it, and he felt pretty good into the meta, I guess, and so I ended up not playing Bravo I ended up playing Bravo on Sunday as well, especially since I heard that my friend Alan Lube won his Roach Nationals with Bravo down at Kingslayers in California. And so I was like, man, I got to run it back. So played Bravo for both Roach Nationals, and I ended up top 8ing in one of them and did not top 8 the second one. But I'll go over the matchups after I go over the deck. But there's a particular reason I wanted to play this Bravo list. And so I guess we'll get started with that. So yeah, let me see. I just got to make sure that everything is sorted in the right order, I guess. All right. Okay, so we'll start off with what I would consider kind of like the main deck. So we have Bravo Showstopper. The original Guardian, this is actually one of my first heroes. I started with Viserai, but I wasn't really sure I didn't really understand the playstyle for OTK Viserai. So I ended up switching over to Bravo, and Bravo was what I felt like one of the best heroes starting out during like the Crucible era, just because he embodies like some of the best fundamental Flesh and Blood. You play with attack action cards, you swing with your weapon, you block, you use attack reactions, you use defense reactions. You basically play with every part of the Flesh and Blood mechanic, I guess. And pitch stacking is also pretty important. You learn to value your armor, you learn to block when you have to, and pivot and take tempo. So I think Bravo is always like a really good starter for anyone looking to get into Flesh and Blood. And yeah, we have a couple of Seismic Surge tokens. When you play Bravo, it's important that you have two, because you'll make one off of Tectonic Plating, and then they'll pop, and then sometimes you'll make a second one. So it's important to have two different tokens to differentiate. We have Crown of Providence. Crown of Providence is just, I guess, the best helmet for Bravo. There's not really much explanation. The big thing is, compared to Ultim, you don't have the luxury of playing Crown of Seeds, and Crown of Providence actually ends up being very important because there are times where you get awkward hands and you have to arsenal a blue. And using that Crown of Providence, you can kind of move that blue from your arsenal and then get another card to your hand, use it for pitch, use it to set up a better arsenal. Crown of Providence actually is fully utilized very well in Bravo. Of course, we have Tectonic Plating. Tectonic Plating is just fantastic because you aren't always going to be throwing out big attacks after big attacks, and Seismic Surges help you set up for important turns. The big thing about Bravo, I think, is you want to set up Seismic Surge into using something like Chokeslam that costs 4, but now 3, I guess Debilitate, and I think Buckling Blow, actually, but I guess I shouldn't really get too far into that. But basically, I think it's very important to have Seismic Surge when you want to go for those 2-card 8 or 3-card 11 with Crippling Crush, or even 3-card Dominate Spinal Crush. So tectonic plating makes your break points, and it's very important, like based off of like the number of cards you get to keep and block with. So that's something to keep in mind with, very important for playing Bravo. Iron Rot legs. This is going to be the legs that you use for most of the matchups. I actually had Mage Master boots in on Saturday, and I took it out for Sunday. But basically, we're not going to be using Ironhide because we almost never have resources, unlike Oldhim, on our opponent's turn. So this one just very important for just blocking on hits. 3+1 for snatch, stuff like that. Curtifis, just for blocks. The classic Anathos. And I only played AB1. So one of the big things about this format that I complain about, I guess, in my, what's it called? In my Pro Tour 5 video was that it felt like this format was basically you're choosing what you want to lose to. And so I had the AB1 for Viserai, what's it called? Briar, and also Icelander. From our previous testing, Icelander, I was kind of happy with just being aggressive. And if they were to Ether Ice Vein me, I would just pitch a blue to pay for Ether Ice Vein, or sorry, pay 1 to block 1 Arcane and then pitch a blue for Ether Ice Vein. So using the entire blue. And I didn't actually want to AB3 to block Icelander. I kind of just want to throw my attacks out and make them kind of crumble under the pressure, I guess. So because of that, I didn't run more AB. And as it turns out, I got paired against Kano several times throughout this weekend. And to me, that was like, I'm okay losing that matchup because I'm like, there's not going to be that many Kanos. And if I face them, I'll take the 1 loss, right? So that's why I don't have more AB. I think your worst matchups for Bravo are going to be like Kano, Lexi, and Briar. And I think I spoke with Alan as well, and I think he believes it's the same. I think Kano is just a very bad matchup. You have to commit a lot of resources to attack, and if you try to like pitch stack them, or if you try to like just swing up AB3, block damage where you can, and then like swing 3, pitch 3, swing 4 with Anathos, you kind of just fall into the same lull where as Oldhim, where Kano just pitch stacks you and hits you with like giant wildfire that overwhelms you. I guess you can potentially try playing AB3 or AB4 plus 2 Oasis Respite if you really want to beat Kano. But I think that matchup is one of those like 30 to 40% matchups, even with high AB count. And with the low amount of players, I didn't really want to dedicate more slots to it. So that's kind of why this is the suite that I chose for my armor. Moving on, we have kind of like the main deck. 3, Crippling Crush. Crippling Crush does not need much explanation. I guess the big thing I learned this weekend, I played a lot of Bravo, but sometimes I feel like you fall into this pitfall of wanting to dominate Crippling Crush, and it really doesn't matter, I think. It's nice to dominate it, but I think usually just attacking with Crippling Crush, if you can do a 3-card Crippling Crush, basically with Seismic Surge, 2 blues, and Crippling Crush, that is way better, and you use the other cards to block. That is way better than to, I guess, pitching an extra blue. If you had the extra blue, yeah, that's great, right? Like you could 4-card with Crippling Crush and 3 blues and can dominate it, and maybe make a Seismic if you already had one. But I just think like if they're blocking you, you want them to block anyway. So important to not, this doesn't need to be dominated. If you can, it's nice, but it felt like sometimes when I just attack with it, if I dominated this, my opponent just didn't block, and they have 2+1, so like 2 cards from hand and still in arsenal, and I'm giving them 11 damage. And usually you have to eat some damage if you want to do that. Would not recommend it. Continuing with that, we have 3 Spinal Crush. This is the one that you want to dominate, okay? So if you have a Seismic Surge, this will cost 4. 4 plus 2 to dominate is 6, so you can 3 card Spinal Crush dominate. This one is important because if you dominate it, they block with 1 card. If they don't have the armor to further block more or maybe another defense reaction, they keep 3 cards in hand. They can't even use all of it usually. Except for against Lexi. They will still be able to do some like Voltaire tricks because it's instant speed, or they can Rain Razors their attack. But yeah, Spinal Crush is actually one of the better ones. In my top 8 game, when I showtimed on turn 1, I actually searched for the Spinal, and it was very good. But my opponent, I mean, Codex of Feralty is just really strong. We have 3 Choke Slams. This is one of the premier red disruption that we have now. It was like actually not that popular for a while, but good against Briar, good against Lexi, and sometimes good against Vi. So really for your aggro matchups, I like playing 2 card hands with Chokeslam with Seismic. So definitely one of the better ones. And then we have 3 Command and Conquers. Needs no explanation, along with, you know, the 3 Pummels. This is way worse in Bravo than Ultim because we're not playing Findle's Spring Tunic. But still, I think Command and Conquer is one of my favorite cards in Bravo because it is a 2 card hand with a blue that can make a Seismic and also demand 2 blocks. And when they do that, they say have like a 2 or 3 card hand. Usually that means that your next hand, or if you have an arsenal set up with a Crippling Crush, you're able to block some and then attack back with your Seismic. Seismic really makes the math for your big crush attacks a lot better. So Pummel is also just really good in Ultim. Sorry, not Ultim, Bravo. The classic Anathos, like Pitch Blue, make Seismic, attack with Anathos, and then you still have 2 floating. You're always representing Pummel, and you're always like having that potential 10 damage if they don't block. So that's all pretty good. And of course, there's the big reason for me to play this deck is this is the white border Bravo that I've been wanting to showcase for a while now. Now LSS has really betrayed me by not making certain cards white border, but I guess that's what we're gonna get into next. So, new card, Pulverize. This pretty much was, I think, HP 1, History Pack 1, cut off at Crucible, and Pulverize came in Everfest, which was like the supplemental set that came after Tales of Aria. So maybe if History Pack 2 gets reprinted in English, we'll have white border Pulverizes, but for now we don't have it. I think Pulverize at 3 is a conscious decision to, actually, like, this is like a main board card for my deck. I think Kale McCreath, like Bravo Master, has mentioned that Pulverize is just a great card to attack with, and it is probably the most efficient Guardian card in general. If you're able to play it off of a 4 card hand with a Seismic, or even if you heave it the previous turn, this is just 14 plus 4 value. Usually they can't full block you, and if they full block you, they're really not attacking you. The decks that can full block you, that means they're probably like, what's it called? Trying to fatigue you potentially, but you're stripping 4 cards for 1. Pulverize is just great. And if you draw multiples, you can always just block with it, but I think a lot of people have found that the more Pulverizes you cast, the higher your win rate actually. So I've been really enjoying just playing Pulverize, and 3 in the main board. I don't even think I take this card out, so it's been awesome. We're gonna skip over and move to some blues that I have. The rest will come later in the side, perhaps. So we got 3 choke slams, 3 debilitates, 3 disable, 3 showtime. There's really not much to explain about these. These are just 6 power cards. The main thing is we are playing Rouse the Ancients, so you want high density of blues that have high attack power. I think we started cutting, the latest Bravos lists have started cutting the 5 power blues, just because there are better blues to play now, as I'll show you more in a second. But yeah, these are just the white border ones, funny enough. Oh yeah, of course, there's 3 unmovables and 2 pummels. So these are the white border ones. I think there is pretty much no other white border that's a 6 power that we're, oh no, there is one that we're missing that I'm very upset about. There's 2 actually. But yeah, originally I was actually playing 3 debilitates in red, but on Sunday, so I was playing 35 blues in the deck overall, and on Sunday I decided maybe I should up my blue count to go back up to 38 and be a little more consistent. I am playing a 3 pulverizes. I didn't really need the extra reds. I ended up siding the debilitates out when I brought in another card that I'll show you in a second. But yeah, it was just, I should have just played the blue unmovables. But ironically, on Saturday, the drawing multiple reds didn't really come up. But on Sunday, after adding 3 blues, I had multiple games, or multiple turns even, where I drew 4 red hands and just did nothing. Like Seismic Surge, pass kind of deal. Just because potentially, like, I think making Seismic Surge is better than just swinging with your Anathos or what have you. But yeah, 2 pummels, just as a card that you're going to pitch early on to cast your crush effects, and later on you can finish the game off with blue pummel. Some other blues that are not white border, we have the 3 Rouse the Ancients. This card is great. I love it. Even though it blocks for 2, this gives Bravo some really efficient attacks, like just big numbers. Pitching a blue, playing the Rouse, revealing something like a Spinal Crush, another blue, and if you have a Seismic Surge, you can basically play that, play them. Or actually, maybe not. Maybe you need to have it in the arsenal. But Guardian players, you guys know what I'm talking about. 3 Thunderquake, and actually, I'm just gonna show this right here. 3 Macho Grande. These are the Everfest blues that everyone plays. They're not white border, but we still play them. And lastly, 3 Cranial Crush. 3 Cranial Crush. That's it. I'm actually really surprised. Why was this card not in white border? This is I guess this was a super rare, which is basically a Majestic that is not as strong as a Majestic back then. I think the LSS wanted to differentiate between, like, which were the premium Majestic cards. They were actually at the same rarity, I believe, originally, but they wanted to let the stores know, kind of like, hey, your Majestics are your ones that should be worth a little more. And yeah, oh, of course, I am playing 3 Terror Sunder as well. With Anathos, this card is really good. 3 cards, 3 blues is Dominated 7, discard 2. Very, very powerful, but not white border. And I guess the other main star of the show, we got the BBB Bravo. Got Buckle, Buckling Blow, and Steel Braid Buckler. Oh yeah, of course, we have the red buckles, pink buckles as well. So this package has been really popular in the last week or two. I believe like it won a Rose Nationals with Oldham won a Rose Nationals with Buckling Blow plus Buckle. This is the tech against Lexi, which has been very, very popular. I think that Bravo can kind of do the same, but I do think that it's interesting. I think Oldham wants to do this plan more often, where they are blocking Lexi out early, and they just arsenal one of the combo piece, and then they go for the Buckle plus Buckling Blow, so that they dominate 9 against Lexi, which usually they cannot block it out. They don't play any defense reactions. They usually don't play Purge Grapplers, and even if they do, they have to give you Purge Grapplers plus Tunic plus a card from hand to stop this combo. But I think Oldham wants to do this more often. I actually played against 3 Lexis and actually used these 2 cards 0 times. I actually did use blue Buckling Blow, though, to kill my opponent by dominating it, funny enough. But yeah, this combo I think is fine. It's more important that you get this off early, because late game, the Lexi player may want to block with the New Horizon anyway. So I think, to me, it doesn't cost you too much to play it, but it gives you that extra 5% win rate, perhaps, into Lexi. So even though I didn't use it once, I do think that this is a pretty good inclusion for this meta specifically, because Lexi was very popular. On Saturday, there were 7 Lexi players, so I didn't even have to change much about my deck, but the red debilitates I played originally was coming out through red Buckling Blows, so that's kind of the story for these. The buckles, I think, came in for, originally we were playing like, it was the blue aura that searched for other auras. So basically you're not really cutting into any of your attacks, blue attacks. So the buckle change didn't feel bad at all. It felt like you just randomly had it out. And even like later on in the game, you can just 3-card dominate your Anathos. So still relevant no matter what. I think these are just pretty good cards. 3 Buckling Blows. Oh yeah, these are the original Welcome to Wraith cards that didn't come in white border. So LSS, I can't believe you would do this to me. And these are actually, like, I guess 2 more pieces of equipment that I didn't want to spoil immediately, but that might be the clickbait title anyway. So maybe I'm just messing it all up. But originally, the real thing is I wanted to concede the Kano matchup, because I was like, it's not really winnable, to be quite honest. I think like you can hope that your Kano player doesn't know how to play and it's their first time, but if you're going to a Road to Nationals, they're not going to be first time in Kano. They will know how to just play against Guardian. It's slightly aggressive compared to Oldham, but it's pretty much the same deal. So these actually replaced my AB3, and originally I just was like, I'm never even going to side these in. This is just a total meme. I just wanted to have the BBB Bravo, Buckling Blow, Buckler, and the Buckle. But I actually tried it against Lexi, and initially my second round was against Dorinthia. So I was like, you know what? If there was ever a time where I wanted 3 more life for blocks, and I also didn't mind using Titan's Fist over Anathos, it would be Dorinthia, because you're okay blocking 3 cards to Dorinthia and then swinging your Titan's Fist to get rid of counters or whatever. And I've done that. And so it didn't feel bad at all. And I had 3 more armor to not trigger Reprise. Interestingly, I think what I originally thought I was just going to meme and not play, I did try it out and it was pretty decent. I think for a lot of other aggressive matchups, I would prefer Anathos because Terra Sunder being a 7 is very, very important. And, but yeah, I did try it. It was fine. One of my locals that came with me, Eric, actually from Team Sneep, Bolton the Bird, on Twitter, he suggested that I play Titan's Fist and Buckler into Lexi. And in my finals, I did try this. I don't think it really made a difference, I guess. Like 2 more or 3 more health is great. I don't think Anathos would have came up, I guess, is what I wanted to say. And it's not like Titan's Fist plus Terra Sunder is not good enough against Lexi because he was playing Snapdragons anyway, but I don't, like, it's like if you're Terra Sundering with Titan's Fist and you strip their Perch Grapplers, that's actually pretty good because it means they're not doing it on a Spinal Crush. It means they're not doing it against your Buckle, right? Like, there's so many things that tax the Perch Grapplers that Terra Sunder not being 7 doesn't really matter. So, but yeah, these 2 cards. And I guess the remaining sideboard, there's less memes for these. 3 Sinks and 1 Fate Foreseen. I just thought that 4 0-cost defense reactions was where I wanted to be. Yeah, it didn't... I don't think it mattered that I didn't play more. I think 4 was a really good number. I think for sideboarding, it worked out really well. I'll probably add my sideboard guide or like the Fabry link to the description, and I'll try to get as many matchup sideboards as I can for you guys. So you want more than 3 of these, but you don't need 6, I don't think, because as Bravo, you want to be attacking your opponent a lot more. And when you're drawing these reds, it kind of like messes with your, like, what you wanted, your plan of attacking. If you were to play 6, I guess is what I'm trying to say. But I wanted to play a more aggressive style, so I only played 4. It was pretty good. I had them in against Lexi, had them in against Phi, you know what I mean? And yeah, I don't think there's really too much else to explain. I don't play Sigil of Solace. I think that card may be good in other metas, but I think in this meta, because a lot of the aggro decks play on hits that you really need to block, I would rather just have, like, I don't know, any card that can block rather than sigils. So those are that. I play 3 Thunderquake Reds. To me, this card is basically red Staunch Response, but the attacking version. And this also blocks for 3. And if you heave it, it costs only 3. There's a lot to like about this card. This was mainly just for Guardian Mirror, potentially Icelander if you run into Icelander, but mainly for Guardian Mirror. And yeah, I thought it was good. Again, for me, like, I prefer attacking as Bravo rather than blocking, and also Red Staunch doesn't help with Anathos. So 3 Zealous Belting. I think this is like one of my favorite cards with Anathos because blue plus Anathos plus Zealous Belting is 11 damage, and also even a Seismic Surge. So this is basically 12 points of value if you just value this at 1 with 2 blues and Zealous Belting. So I think it actually did come up where Zealous Belting didn't have go again sometimes. So maybe the number of, like, you know, maybe 2 blue pummel, 3 red, 3 Terra Sunder, 3 buckle wasn't the best, but I think for the most part, it should be fine. This only comes in against things like Dromai, Dash, Guardian, where they're going to be blocking you more, or it's going to be a race, or it's like the points, the damage points matters, as opposed to in the aggro matchups. You don't really want to strictly race aggro decks. And lastly, I have 2 Remembrance and 2 Staunch Response. So I think earlier in the video I mentioned I originally had Toma Findle and Mage Master Boots on Saturday. On Sunday, I took them out for Staunch Response blues, just to bolster myself up to that extra 40 blues in the matchup. And ironically, on Sunday, there was only one Oldhim and I think like 3 Bravos. Whereas on Saturday, there was 4 or 5 Oldhims. So I didn't even play against any Oldhims. And I don't really know if that really matters. But ultimately, the logic for me was playing blue staunch as extra blues along with the 3 unmovables would help with the Guardian matchup, but also make my deck a little more consistent. And I was trying the strategy of like adding over 60 cards in the Guardian Mirror. So that meant like more reds. So adding some blues to kind of offset that to make it so that you have less awkward hands. I think it was fine in theory. I didn't get to actually play it, but thinking back on my games on Saturday, I think it didn't really come down to fatigue. So I don't even know if I really want the Remembrance because I just basically played more Pulverizes than them anyway, right? Like, yeah, I don't really know if I want the Remembrance. I think I want to just play 60 cards into Oldhim, to be quite honest. But I guess that matchup doesn't even matter anymore because Oldhim, a living legend. So I think, yeah. So, but yeah, these 2 staunch responses, I was inspired by Alan. So again, shout outs to Alan Lube and congrats to Alan for winning his Road to Nationals. Unfortunately, I did not win mine or even qualify. But I think Bravo was a really fun deck, and I had a really good time playing the deck. And oh yeah, let's show off. I got this cold foil Riptide as my top 8 prize, so pretty stoked about it. I guess I wish it was an Uzuri because it's slightly more popular hero. But I guess I will try to win it next week when I have my next Road to Nationals. In terms of matchups, on Saturday, I played, I think Endzone had 40 players. We played 6 rounds with a cut to top 8. My first round was against Oldhim. I think we basically traded damage early on. It was Oldhim with Titan's Fist and Rampart. But we traded damage early on, and then I ended up winning with a Pummel. In the second round, I played against Dorinthia. It was a pretty close matchup, but I felt like I had control for a good amount of time. My opponent ended up having a Singing Steel Blade left in their arsenal that they kind of held off for a while, and I chose not to block to be able to close out the game. And luckily, they just basically didn't use it for 3 turns in a row because they didn't have any good targets left because they had basically one blue left after their blocks, and they didn't have like a Iron Song response or anything that they could play because it cost them like an extra resource that they didn't have in order to kind of like push the damage and end the game. So I guess I got pretty lucky there. Tried out the Buckler. Buckler was pretty interesting. And I think Dorinthia versus Bravo, still a pretty close game. Probably, I would say Bravo favored, but Dorinthia has a lot more tools like Glistening Steel Blade. And I think my opponent wasn't playing Twinning Blades. I think Twinning Blades perhaps would be really good, really punishing for Guardian players that want to block. Round 3, I played against Lexi. My opponent said he didn't really practice Lexi very much, but he also got very unfortunate draws. I think his first turn, didn't really do much. He had a 3-of-a-kind hand that only presented like 10 to 12 damage, so I wasn't even blocking with more than 1 card. And then he had another 3-of-a-kind hand that was very similar, ultimately culminating into having I think a double Codex of Frailty that very awkward for him to play out. Double Rain Razors when I was kind of pushing towards the end. And so I think his draws were just very awkward, drawing multiple power cards that didn't line up very well. But yeah, didn't get to use Buckling Blow in that matchup, but just kind of did Bravo things of Crippling Crush, Spinal Crush. Double Terror Sunder with Anathos in this matchup was pretty good. I don't know if Titan's Fist would have been as good, but based off of the way that I drew the sequencing, because they were playing perch grapplers, but they were very like they were slowed down a lot with my Terra Sunders for 7, and they ended up having to block one of the Terra Sunders, or yeah, I don't think they blocked, but Terra Sunder is very good. Round 4, I got paired into Kano. I pretty much have AB1, but I basically turn 1 swing debilitate red that I end up cutting on Sunday. But swing basically 8 vanilla damage, and my opponent hit me for 20 damage with like 9 to 12 cards in his pitch stack on the first turn, just popping off. And I don't I don't really know if having more AB would have helped me there, because they went like they did opt a lot, but it was they did have double Tomo Mather and double blue kind of thing. I think the extra ops helped them set them up perfectly kind of thing, but I do think like you were just taking so much damage turn 1 anyway, so I was quickly dispatched in like a couple turns after that. Just like needing to spend so much resources to present like an attack that they actually like maybe care to block, you're just not efficient enough to beat Kano. So I had 2 rounds left, and I was like, well, at least I'm 3-1. My losses will be late. I just need to win one more. I had one of my closest games against, I believe his name is Tony, a Utah local that, he was actually one of the first Kano players I've seen back when Crucible, or actually back when Monarch first came out. And we had like one of the closest, best games that I've had as Guardian versus Lexi. And basically it came down to like the last 3 turns. We were just like, does he have it? Do I have it? Does he have it? And I attacked with like a Crippling Crush, and he showed me that he had to block with his 3 of a kind, and it was just hoping like anything but Crippling Crush, right? And then basically he, I think, had a Codex turn, and I chose not to block going to 1. I think he was hoping that I would block, and it ended up being favorable for me, where I was able to dominate and win the following turn. So yeah, that pretty much 4-1 locked me for top 8. In the last round I played against Oldhim. I think I tried to play my best against Oldhim, but my opponent played pretty well. I had very awkward draws where he threw an Endless Winter at me, and I drew like Zealous Belting, Rouse the Ancients, Pummel, and I was like, wow, my first 2 Zealous Beltings that I'm seeing in the game, and it's perhaps like 7 hands in. So I had to like, the way I played it was I blocked 3 cards, and then I Anathosed back for 4. But it felt very bad where, 3-card block and I still took 2 damage, right? I feel like I lost the game on the spot right there, but there was also like a turn where I drew double Pummel red and couldn't really have a good turn. He blocked very efficiently. His deck was playing like, I think, even 2 Peace of Minds, like multiple Oasis Respites. So I think I should have maybe played slower, maybe just like Anathos while setting up my pitch stack for the first cycle, and then having like repeated turns. But in this game, I had hands that lined up where I could like dominate Crippling Crush. And in playing originally Bravo versus Oldhim, I always felt like on the Oldhim side, my opponent's dominating Crippling Crush, and I can't block nearly enough damage, and I just fall behind. So I kind of tried incorporating or implementing that strategy, but I think like against his build where he had so many instants that was able to block dominated attacks, it just didn't work out. So I don't know how much of this will actually matter, again, because Oldhim is living legend. But yeah, I lost that matchup, but maybe for the best, because I was trying to dodge the Kano going into top 8 anyway. So we ended up both being 4-2, and he was like the 5th seed and I was the 6th seed. And so going into top 8, I was able to dodge the auto loss Kano matchup. But then I got paired into one of my local players on Lexi. I had to go first based off of modified play draw, but my hand was actually pretty good. I was able to set up a seismic. I was able to showtime, get a spinal crush. I felt like spinal crush was the best. To stifle Lexi's plays as opposed to like searching for a buckling blow or searching for a crippling crush. So I had control of the first couple turns, but quickly it was just like I would attack them and they would have like bolt and shot, rain razors, ways to get ponder and just still deal a ton of damage even through my disruption. And then like Codex of Frailty was just completely brutal. I was in a spot where he had rain razors and then he played Codex of Frailty getting back Endless Arrow. And if I didn't block this Endless Arrow, he had Snapdragon plus Bullseye Bracer. So that is just where, Lexi is just very, very powerful. And he had two of those turns, and I just ended up falling behind on life, even though I was ahead by, I would say like 12 or 13 life for a bit. And so I couldn't close out and ended up losing. I'm really happy that my, local friend managed to top. I think it's his first time qualifying for nationals. So for me, it was like, okay, I'd rather lose to a local than lose to one of the Utah folks, even though I love them as well. But so that ended my run on Saturday. Ended up being 4-2 and then losing to Oldham. So I was losing to Lexi. 2-1 into Lexi. Felt pretty good. Originally, I was going to run Lexi for Sunday, but I saw the meta on Saturday and I was like, Bravo felt kind of good. Alan just texted me and it was like he just won his Virgin Nationals, and I was like, yeah, you know what? Maybe I'll adjust some of my numbers, head back and play on Sunday. On Sunday, I ended up playing Dash in the first round. I think my opponent got items out really early. I think he got his 4 items out by like turn 5. I had hands that didn't present any on hits or like anything that was relevant. It was just like like a cranial crush for 8, you know what I mean? So they blocked what they could and then set up their items. I think eventually I had to like chain enough attacks to kind of deal damage, but once they get one cycle of their loadout for their pistols and their inductions and their purifiers, he caught back up really quickly. I ended up taking some damage to deal some more damage because I knew I had to close out the game. In the last 3 turns, I pretty much dominated an attack every turn, but reinforced line was pretty good. Unmovable was pretty good. I think my opponent had to pitch 3 reds for unmovable for 1 turn, and that really like slowed him down. But ultimately, it was like a 1-to-1 game, so I got very close and I ended up winning. Round 2, I played against the same Kano opponent as Saturday. I just accepted my auto loss. I didn't even play. I just scooped it up. Maybe I should have played, but it was like either we sit down for 20 minutes and play, and then I lose regardless, or not. And then next round I played against Phi. Having played Phi for a long time, I would say even more than I've played Bravo, and I would consider myself more of a Bravo main than a Phi main. I felt like Bravo was actually slightly favored into Phi. And I even won the die roll and was able to go second, so that was very good. But I blocked 2 cards, I think, turn 1. And on my redraw, so the 2 cards I kept were Choke Slam, Sink Below, I think. And then on the redraw, I drew 2 more reds, so I basically had nothing I could do. What I did was I just made a Seismic and Arsenal to Choke Slam. So like if I draw any blue, I can Choke Slam for 1 card. And I have Sink Below to dig for it, whatever it may be. And I think they go head jab, Blaze Headlong. I go Sink, put back a red. I think I drew a blue, but I don't really remember. And then on my turn, assuming I did draw that blue, pitched a blue, choke slammed them. But it didn't matter because their hand was like double E strike. So actually they went like E strike into E strike draw a card, something like that. Or E strike head jab from Arsenal and then E strike draw a card. So they actually just ate my entire choke slam. Didn't even matter. But on my draw though, it was like another 4 red hand. So I was like, another turn where I can't do anything. Basically I blocked where I could, made a seismic Arsenal card, I guess. And then like it just kept on, like, I think missing 2 turns there basically lost me so much tempo and I couldn't come back. I fell really far behind. I was pretty frustrated at this game, after this game, and I think my opponent knew. I do want to apologize to my opponent for feeling really frustrated, or like coming off as being really frustrated. And I did apologize to him after, because he was apologizing to me for being like, oh, I don't want to seem like I'm, because he knew that I was getting pretty unfortunate. He saw that I didn't do anything on my first turn. But I wasn't really like mad at him, right? I was mad at my own deck. And ironically, this is where I wanted to bring up, where it's like I added more blues and then I still had the 4 red hand turns, as opposed to like on Saturday where I didn't really run into that issue. So, of course, a little bit of anecdotal evidence, right? So at this point, I'm like 1-2, basically out of contention, really frustrating. I was basically like, maybe I'll just play a couple more rounds. I have nothing better to do. My friends are still in contention for top 8, right? And what's it called? Yeah, I was like, I know there's one other Kano in the room, and if I get paired against them, I'm gonna be really annoyed because this will just tank my elo. But at this point, elo didn't really matter to me anymore. It was kind of just like the bad beats was frustrating, right? But of course, as we sit down, I see there's one slot, one chair empty for me to go to, and it was the player with the Ether Wildfire mat. And I had a great game with my opponent, but it was not close at all. My opponent was very pleasant, and he played it safely. The life totals looked close, right? I just freaking pulverized him, and he was like, thinking about it, but ultimately pulverized does not matter in that matchup. And the life totals look close, but he had the kill, and it was academic. And lastly, I played Uzuri in my final round. The game was actually really close. I think like there was, every time I either blocked 6 or I didn't block the stealth attack, because like either I cared about it or I didn't care about it, whatever. But the one time where I was like, should I block this? I was hesitant, because I was like, oh, I kind of like my arsenal. I don't want it getting blown up or anything. The one time I did decide to be hesitant and like ultimately block was the time they were like, oh, Spreading Plague. And I was like, ah, shit, this is a hand where I had like 3 or 4 reds and I couldn't pay for the double Blood Rot token. So I really got right there. But ultimately I was able to kind of eat a Death Touch, go to 1, get a Blood Rot Pox token, but dominate and kill my opponent, because I noticed that they didn't have any more. Well, I wasn't sure. I saw that they went through 3 Fate, 3 Sinks, 3 Oasis, and like 2 Frailty Traps or something. So I was like pretty sure, because you're at like 2 or something like that, that you're just dead, even if you have the Frailty Trap. Because they had like, I think 1 armor and no arsenal. And yeah, I ended up managing to close it out. So really sloppy 2-3 in the second day. But like I said, like this was the frustrating thing for me for this format, where it's like you choose what you lose to. And the second day, on Sunday, there was 29 players, basically 2 Kanos, and I was like, I choose to lose to the Kanos, fine, but getting matched up against those 2 Kanos, and you're just like, wow, this is miserable. I think if I played Lexi on the second day, I would have had a way better time, because there was a lot lower Lexi numbers and there was only 1 Ultim. So in general, like the field was very even. Like the spread of heroes, there was a lot of like 1-ofs, 2-ofs, very few like 3-ofs. I think there was only like 3 Lexi, for example, or maybe 4. So not nearly as like a concentrated meta as or condensed meta as it was on Sunday or Saturday at End Zone, which is kind of what I prefer. I prefer if the meta was a little closer so you can kind of actually prepare your deck, prepare your sideboard to fight these meta decks, right? Yeah, I guess this is speaking from like someone who's more trying to be like in the competitive scene, but it felt like the super wide open meta was harder to play. But yeah, that was my deck profile of White Border BBB Bravo. I really thought that I wanted to do this video as a meme, but I ultimately really enjoyed Bravo. I still would highly recommend anyone who wants to play Bravo to pick him up. Oldhim is rotating now after this format. Pablo just won with Oldhim at Calling Antwerp, and so there's going to be more Guardian players that are coming from Oldhim to Bravo. The more aggressive play style is just fantastic. Crippling Crush is one of the funnest cards to play in Flesh and Blood. Just good, honest Flesh and Blood, honestly. This deck is super fun. A lot of white border, and I think Alan actually posted his deck profile of the deck that he won with, along with some deck philosophy and his decisions. So I would definitely recommend checking out Alan Lube's video. And some of my lists was inspired by him. I do want to give a shout out again to my friend Spencer Freeman, of course. Originally, he was like kind of telling me to play Bravo more aggressively. He was like, oh, just play more attacks. And I was like, yeah. So that's kind of like, I started with Spencer's list, modified it a bit, got some inspiration from Alan with the double blue staunches. Buckling Blow is a really cool innovation that the Oldhim players have found. And I think it is interesting into Lexi, but unfortunately I was unable to try it. So with that, I think I'm going to close out this video. Thanks for watching, everyone. Make sure you leave a comment, like, and subscribe if you haven't already. If you have any questions, leave it in the comments. I will be adding the sideboard guide with a Fabber link into the description. So yeah, thank you so much, guys.